Hey there, beautiful teachers! Today I want to talk to you about some lessons and takeaways that I've been reflecting on and that I think you could learn something from too, from the pianist Nobuyuki Tsujii. I recently had the absolute privilege of being able to attend a concert of Nobuyuki Tsujii in the National Concert Hall in Dublin. I happened upon these tickets through a family friend, and I cannot believe my luck. As it happens, I was very busy in the lead up to this. I agreed to the concert. I was going with my mum, and she said what was being played. All she had to say was Beethoven, Chopin, and Liszt, and I said, great, I'll go. I didn't really question it further, and I didn't look it up. And it was only when I arrived and we looked at the program that I realized who it was. Oh my gosh, did I feel lucky in that moment. So I loved the concert. He's a wonderful pianist. But I also think we can take away some enormous lessons from this man. So after the concert, I was looking up some different information about Nobuyuki Tsujii, his background and different things. Wanted to learn more about him after I just enjoyed the concert. It's a way of prolonging the concert enjoyment, right? And I came across this quote from him that I want to read to you. I just played the songs I wanted to instead of going to the usual piano book. Even when I went to piano school, the teacher let me have fun and play whatever I wanted. I think that's why piano is still so fun for me. I think first and foremost that music should be fun. It's like I fed him a quote. I didn't, I promise. I happened to find that in one of these articles. And it speaks to fun, which I talk about all the time, and joy. And you could see that in his playing. I mean, there's no way to know, of course, if a performer is just putting it on, but it certainly felt genuine. It felt like, despite the fact that he was a pretty serious performing schedule at the moment, he's flying all over the world doing this tour, he really seemed to love being on that stage and performing for everyone. So the joy is still there. And it started in his childhood. It started with his first lessons, where he says, the teacher let me have fun and play whatever I wanted. I think he's saying that from a frame of reference of, hey, most teachers don't always do that. And maybe that teacher was more persuaded to do that because if you haven't come across Nobuyuki Tsujii before, he's actually blind. So it was an exceptional case. And there's a chance, I think, for many of us teachers, that in those exceptional cases, we do things we wouldn't do otherwise. Now, I don't know anything about that teacher. Maybe she always follows exactly what the student wants to learn and focuses on fun. Or maybe, in this case, she was different. I know some of us, myself included, end up doing that without realizing it with certain students. So first and foremost, it should be fun. You should get to enjoy it. This is a pianist who started picking out tunes on a little toy piano that his mother had at age 2. And it was just a game between him and his mum. And then she thought, hey, I better get this kid some lessons. And obviously it went on a long way from there. But it started with fun. And honestly, it ends with fun because his performances do feel fun. They don't feel like stuffy classical performances. Not that I have any problem with classical performance format, and not that he was way breaking with conventions or anything like that, but there was a sense of fun the entire time. And I believe it starts with that pure joy of learning piano, of playing the instruments. Which kind of leads me to my second lesson we can learn. This is such a silly little thing, but I think it has a huge effect on our industry and the way things are going, and particularly classical music. So, the first piece, I believe it was the first piece he played, was the Waldstein, the Beethoven Sonata. And guess what happened after the first movement? Yes, the audience clapped. Myself and my mum did not clap. We maybe looked like Scrooges. We didn't glare at the people who were clapping, but like almost the whole audience clapped. And that was honestly the moment that I started thinking about recording this. Not that I was so distracted from the performance, I got back into the music and everything, but that's when this occurred to me. We can learn a lot from this pianist because the audience clapped. What does that mean? It means they don't normally go to the concert hall Is that a negative thing? Should we tut at them? No. They came to the concert hall. The concert hall was full. It is not normally full, I'm sorry to say. It is full, I'd say, when the orchestra does like Beethoven's Fifth, but as a general rule, it's not full anymore. And if it continues not being full, then it's in danger. We have to be real about that. So yes, the audience clapped at the wrong time. They clapped because they thought the first movement was amazing, and they thought he was done because he lifted his hands off the piano, so what were they supposed to think? They didn't know you're not supposed to. That's fine. If they had been the one audience member in a room full of regular concert hall goers, then they would have clapped and felt awkward. As it was, we were overwhelmingly in the minority for not clapping. They didn't get any of that awkwardness. But this is why I say this is a silly little thing, but it is affecting our industry. This is often what comes up when people say, oh, I wouldn't go to the concert hall. You know, the concert hall tickets are much cheaper than, pop concert, even a smaller act. They're not extremely expensive. So that's not the reason people don't go. They don't go because they don't think they belong there. And the clapping is just a symbol of that. It might have been something they heard of that they're not sure when they're supposed to clap or when they're not. I mean, obviously it's easy to follow because you just say, just don't clap first. When people start clapping, you can clap too. That's it. It's pretty simple. But that's not the real issue they have. The issue they have is they'll feel like an imposter. They'll feel like they're not supposed to be there. Here's the thing. What did this pianist do when the audience clapped? I've been at concerts before where a few audience members clapped at the wrong time. Okay, the pianist didn't get up and yell at them or anything, but they didn't look happy. They look peeved. And they kind of shake their head slightly or just twitch a little bit. And I get it, it's interrupting their flow and stuff. But you could see none of that. Maybe it bothered him, but he didn't show it. He just focused on enjoying the performance and performing for everyone and getting to have this experience together. Maybe this is a common experience because maybe he often attracts audience members who don't usually go to concert halls. As for my reaction, when the whole audience clapped, at first my eyebrows raised slightly, I'm going to be honest, because wasn't expecting the sound. And then I immediately smiled and thought, yeah, I was right, because I had, when I entered the concert hall, I had thought, hey, this audience isn't, there's a lot of people here who don't always go to the concert hall. Not that I would recognize everyone, but you could just tell the type of people that are there. So, and that's not a judgment on them. That's just, this doesn't look like the standard concert hall audience, i.e., I am not one of the youngest people here. I just smiled because I thought, hey, I was right. They don't come very often. Hopefully they'll come back. So I think this brings me to my third lesson that we can take from this concert from this pianist. And that is hooks. So hooks are a term we use in marketing a lot and particularly in video creation. It can be in text as well. So the hook is the first thing in a video, and it's become very important in the TikTok world and the Instagram reels and whatever. There has to be something at the very start to grab the viewer's attention because otherwise they're just going to go on to the next video because people have no attention span. But the hook is just, it's right from fishing. It's the thing that reels you in. So this audience are not normally in the concert hall. How did they get there? How did they know to go? Well, for better or for worse, Nobuyuki Tsujii has two hooks, in my view, that were very obvious. This video is sponsored by Vivid Practice. Managing student assignments shouldn't be a hassle. VividPractice.com makes it easy to track progress, streamline assignments, and encourage better practice habits without the clutter of unnecessary features. Designed by music teachers for music teachers, Vivid Practice keeps students engaged with simple, effective tools like practice modes, progress tracking, and built-in messaging. Spend less time managing and more time teaching. Try vividpractice.com today with a free account. Number one, he's Japanese. And I'm saying that because there were a lot of Japanese people here. It was at this concert, it was the whole Japanese community of Dublin, it felt like, came out. Not exactly, but there were a lot of Japanese people in the audience. So that was amazing. Maybe, I don't know, Japanese society or something like that, maybe spread the word, or they just heard about it or something. So that was the hook. Oh, a Japanese guy is visiting Dublin to perform. That doesn't happen every day. I'll go. Hook number 2, I've already mentioned, is he is blind. And I say for better or for worse because in every article about him, every time he's talked about, it is like, da-da-da-da, blind pianist. Which is a bit like, okay, there's other things I'm sure that are interesting about him. But I get it, because that's the hook. If you don't normally pay attention to a pianist is coming to Dublin, but you hear a blind pianist who has won prestigious competitions is coming, you're thinking, how does that work? I wonder what that's like. And maybe you read more and maybe you think, I wonder how much tickets are. And so you look it up and you're like, oh, I can get a ticket in the choir stalls for like 20 something euro. I'll go. And that's how it was full, including the choir stalls behind the stage. The whole place was full. Now this is all conjecture, but this is what I think happened. There were a lot of young people there. So again, I don't know, maybe they've seen videos of him online, maybe they heard about it somehow, maybe they did advertising. I don't know the ins and outs of it. But somehow they reeled in people who don't normally go. And that is a lesson that our industry needs. Because as I've said, I don't know how it is at the closest concert hall to you. If you have one nearby, ours is not usually full. Not all the time. It's full, as I say, when they do Beethoven's Fifth, or when they do like music from the movies, and they do things like that, and that's great to bring people in. But it's not usually full for a solo pianist. And this time it was. And it was amazing. And you know what, the other thing, like, yes, they clapped in between movements and whatever. They didn't clap between the second and third movement because he didn't pause. I don't know whether he adjusted that based on the audience or whether that was just always the plan. But the other thing about this audience that you don't normally hear in the concert hall and was extra great, I think, because he is blind, they hooped and hollered. So when they were clapping, which there was a lot of clapping, it wasn't just polite clapping, very nice. No. Everyone, stood up, which seems to happen at every performance these days. There's always a standing ovation. But they were cheering and whistling. It wasn't the standard sound of a classical applause. And I loved it. I loved hearing these people really excited that they just heard a Beethoven sonata. I mean, how great is that? To go back to the joy, by the way, we didn't just hear Beethoven sonata and the Liszt and the Chopin that was scheduled. There were, of course, encores. And, you expect encores. I generally expect 2 these days. And I think the expectation is building for 3. But no, he did 4 encores. 4. And this is what I mean about joy. Maybe he does that because it's a great marketing thing to do. Maybe the expectation is growing in the number of encores you have to do, and that's just, society and reality and the culture of it. Or maybe he just really wanted to play more stuff for this audience who was, as I say, hooting and hollering for him. He finished his 4th encore, by the way, gave another bow, and then closed the piano lid. Which I thought was excellent, and everyone got a giggle out of that. Because, he'd been going on and off and on and off and doing bows and then sitting down again, and he was like, it's done. And gave one last bow, and off he went with his big smile. So, joy, bringing in audiences that aren't normally there. Now, there is another side to this, and I've mentioned the fact that he's blind is always brought up, which I get, it's what's remarkable, apart from his remarkable playing. But anyway, there are also misconceptions and assumptions that people make, and I'd say that comes with the territory of having this remarkable thing about you. So when he plays, especially when he's playing with an orchestra, he plays concertos and things, when he plays, he's moving his head. He does it less when he's playing solo, so in this case it wasn't a lot, but sometimes I've seen videos where he's moving his head a lot side to side in this particular way. And so people have jumped to some pretty rash conclusions and written articles where they claim that he has autism. He doesn't. Claim that he has Down syndrome. Also doesn't. He just has this particular eye condition, which caused him to be blind from birth. And the reason he's moving his head leads me to my final lesson we can take from him, which is the obvious one for a blind pianist. I'm not saying blind because he's not blind, but a blind pianist. And that is listening. He's moving his head in that way because he's not focused on what he looks like. He's focused on hearing because he has to hear, right? Because actually every musician not should be moving their head in that way, but should be listening that closely. So when he plays with an orchestra, people ask him, how do you follow the conductor? And he says he listens to the conductor's breathing to tune in to their different indications and manages to follow them very well. He also learns everything sort of by ear, but I would debate us even putting that label on it. So he can read Braille music notation, but it is very slow and there's not huge accessibility to that. Every piece he wants to learn wouldn't be in Braille, especially the pieces he's learning at this stage, which are more advanced. So there's just not the demand for them. So the way he learns now is that he has assistants who play just a few bars of a piece at a time, hands separate, and note anything that's on the score. Tell him what the dynamics are or the articulation that's notated or whatever the case may be. And he tells them, don't put any interpretation on it, I just want the facts. And he learns from that. Yeah, it takes pretty dedicated process, right, to work through that. But is he playing by ear? Not in the usual way we think of that term. Yes, he is obviously literally playing by listening because that's the way he learns. But he's not playing by ear because he's not listening to a performance of whatever he's learning and then trying to replicate that, because that would be replicating the interpretation. So I think it's interesting to think about what we would call that. Playing the notation by listening? I don't know. Maybe I'm nitpicking, but I think it's interesting to think about the difference between that and playing by ear. In any case, it requires detailed, dedicated listening skills. And it's obvious that he has those. And I think it makes him a good and interesting example to give to our students when they maybe aren't listening to their own playing. Something to think about, and definitely just without the listening or the blind component, an inspiring pianist to show to your students as well. So let me know if you've ever heard Nobuyuki Tsujii play or watch videos of him playing and what you think about that, and any lessons that stood out to you from today.